Let's talk Twitter, because the ramifications of Elon Musk's $61 billion purchase are starting to bear a bit of fruit. The left media are uniting to defame the eco-billionaire they all once loved.
Twitter is not the real world. And in fact, on Twitter, it is predominantly straight white men. So when Elon Musk says, wow, this is about free speech, it seems to me that it's about free speech of straight white men.
Elon Musk lives in a world in which the only kind of free speech is white men feeling free to say whatever the hell they want.
Funny how the hard left, James, don't love Twitter as much anymore now that it might actually be a fairer platform. But can he clean it up, do you think?
Well, I don't think it really matters if he cleans it up or not. I think what really matters is that he winds up just, essentially breaking what is the leftist narrative machine that Twitter has become. This is why they are all so utterly threatened by it, because they have been revealed as authoritarians who hate free speech, who knew that Twitter was against free speech and that they were completely okay with it, because for the left, this was how they A, crafted and B, enforced their narrative. This was a social media device that people from across the political spectrum, sane people, have said has been one of the most toxic influences in society. There's a great essay by Jonathan Haidt, the American researcher, on this. Go out and read that, because it explains how this has encouraged all of the worst behavior in politics and in social media. It is a toxic sewer. And now that, this is the same group that wanted you not to discuss Hunter Biden, that didn't want you to talk about the Wuhan lab leak theory, that didn't want to talk about all sorts of things. Well, now suddenly people are going to be allowed to talk about that. They're so threatened because it means that they won't be able to enforce that conformity. And so many of the people who are involved in this conformity enforcing are editors, writers, journalists in major news organizations, New York Times, CNN, all of these sorts of things. They go to it to reinforce their worldview. And that's why they're so threatened by somebody saying, hey, you can still have your worldview. We won't censor you, but you just got to hear the other guys. So it's hilarious. It's fantastic. I'm loving every minute of the meltdown, Peter.
Well, it's massive groupthink, right? I have never, confession here, I have never in my life sent a tweet, never will. It's full of all the people I abhor. And I once had a gallery journalist in Canberra this year say to me that he only got his perspective back when he got off Twitter. And he realised that there's a much bigger world out there in terms of political analysis than he was, looking at and observing, watching people's tweets. But Corey, what worries me here is we can clap Elon Musk coming into this space, but I don't like the idea that these billionaires have so much power over our news and our platforms. And yes, Musk might take them head on, but for how long? And what happens if and when he sells up?
Well, Peter, that's another good point. You've got to apply first principles here. If it's wrong for Mark Zuckerberg to influence everything that happens at Facebook, why is it okay for another tech billionaire who might think like we do, for example, to be able to have the same authority and power? So that remains to be tested. I still believe that these platforms need to be designated as publishers. They need to comply with the law. That is entirely consistent with what Musk has actually said, that free speech should only be withheld by the law. And so if you're going to break the law, you shouldn't be allowed to do it on Twitter. Now, I think that's entirely reasonable. I think the laws of defamation and slander and libel and all these things should be upheld there. Now, the big problem we've got, of course, is how do you enforce this globally? And I do note that if the European Union has already said, if Musk goes down this path, they will look at banning Twitter in Europe. That's how fearful the left are of free speech. They can only thrive through censorship. Their ideas are so kooky, so outrageous, so dumb, that if they actually are challenged and to a debate and factually debunked, they will wither and die. And that is what has them scared out of their wits. So I'm happy to go along with the Musk experiment, notwithstanding a couple of reservations, as you've pointed out, Peter.
Still won't make you want to buy one of his Teslas, but all strength to his arm. Gentlemen, see you next week. Corey Bernardi, James Morrow.